What is happening out there, rotoscouts? Wait for it. Baseball fans, we're back. I'm back. We'll find out if anybody's here for this little pop-up surprise show. Mentioned it on the basketball slate that it would be coming, so hopefully people were here for that. Looks like a couple people in the room already. Love it. Sent out a little notice to everybody on Twitter. Anybody who follows the @rotoscouts Twitter handle would have seen that. You could probably grab that if you don't already follow it. Pop it into your algorithm there. Gonna cover tomorrow morning's baseball game. Can't wait. So excited. We'll talk through the various plays as usual. Just one game to break down, unfortunately. Would love to be here for an hour and a half talking through all this, but we've got a little pocket here because there's only one 9 p.m. basketball game. We've already got the news for it. Just got an update in for the basketball slate. If you've got lineups in, Marcus Smart is not going to be playing today. I just took him out, updated projections. That's not the 9 p.m. game, so you got time to worry about that later. But we'll stay on top of things. But we already have Utah. We already basically have Chicago. So we should be good at 9 o'clock. Jeremy Grant out. We knew that. Some more news coming in right now, actually. Trey Murphy headed to the locker room. That's never good. Steph Curry, Quentin Post are game time decisions. Jeremy Grant was already out. Tamani Kamara is a game time decision. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. But little pocket of time to talk through baseball slate. Few people here hanging out. So if you don't know, this is the Tokyo series. The Los Angeles Dodgers at the Chicago Cubs, technically. But this game's taking place in the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. Tokyo Dome, I just left it alone as far as the park factors go. The park factors are reasonable enough comps to what Wrigley looks like overall. So just kind of left it as far as what the influence on our numbers here would look like. You could make minor tweaks. Maybe I will. These projections and home run totals will be available for you guys sometime this evening after this show is done, obviously, but not too late in the evening. You'll have them for tomorrow morning if you're getting up early. You'll have them for tonight after the show if you're building lineups tonight. And it's just one game to work with. Obviously, we've got different formats. FanDuel doing the MVP star thing, and DraftKings going with just the one captain spot and the multiplied salary. So very different as far as what you can get to across sites when we're talking about Shohei Ohtani, who's 10,000 on DK in the util role, so 15,000 on DK in the captain spot. Obviously, the biggest upside player of the day, it's Shohei Ohtani. He's the best player in the world, one of the best players in the world, depending on which side of the debate you fall on. But he's very price heavy. You've got a lot more reasonable prices through the rest of these lineups, so I don't know that Ohtani's your go-to automatic captain on DraftKings like the standard person out of the public would probably do, just going for the top score. But you're talking about a ludicrously talented player. 731 plate appearances in a full season of health last year. Went 310, 390, 646, had a 336 ISO for the season. 54 home runs, 59 stolen bases. Created runs 81% better than the average player. You just don't get better than that. So in every sense, Shohei Ohtani belongs in lineups outside of he's going to be very as popular as he can get to at that price. He will be, and then some. And his price makes combinations very challenging. Even on FanDuel, where it doesn't multiply, still a challenging price at $10K to get in with some of the other good players on the slate. Should be leading off for the Dodgers. It's the typical positions where you want Shohei Ohtani. Is 390 on base percentage, his ludicrous ability to create situations for those that come behind him. Unfortunately for the Dodgers, no Mookie Betts for the Tokyo series. He's going to be out for these two games. This configuration of the lineup, these are just labs projected lineups as usual. Tommy Edman in the 2 spot. Reasonable enough spot filler, not Mookie Betts, quite obviously. And they might not go in that direction. You might see somebody else climb the ladder. You might see like a Will Smith jump into that spot. You might just see everybody slide up and they go with Freddie in the 2 and so on and so forth. But Edman, very capable of holding that spot down. He's also a switch hitter, so it's dynamic as far as the lineup spot goes. Don't have to worry about any mixing and matching later on. So I think it probably will be Edman. I think they've got that right. 6,200, nice cheap piece on DK. Multi-position eligible, not that it matters on FanDuel today, but nice to see him with 3 positions to carry. 5,500, obviously first stumble of the season. Put an error on the board already. But yeah, multi-position not going to matter today because everybody's just going in util, MVP, star, and so on. But Edman, he's a good player when he's fully available. We had a partial season from him last year, 153 moderately effective plate appearances, 6 home runs and 6 stolen bases. He's always been good for counting stats, typically functions better at the top of a lineup as a guy who can be driven in by other players, but he's got a decent ability to drive the ball. 180 ISO in the small sample last year, was right around league average at 98 WRC+. Nothing exceptional, but a functionally cheap piece if he's hitting second tomorrow. So somebody to keep in mind as far as a guy that you can get to and a guy who can help make other things work. I don't know that you want him as your captain, even though he's the cheapest guy and in a favorable lineup spot with correlation to all the key Dodgers from the top end. But I don't know that you go that route because his individual upside is a little bit capped, and you do want the individual production. Look like Will Smith down the board, and then Muncy, Teoscar, those guys were getting a decent amount of captain ownership, and I think any one of those guys is a decent enough choice there. You've also got some reasonable upside options in a slightly cheaper price range on the other side, depending on what you're looking to do with captain. On FanDuel, there is a discussion about correlating those multiplier spots. Not to bounce around too much, but it just popped into my head. You could attempt to go bullseye the highest raw score, bullseye the second highest raw score, regardless of which team, which part of the lineups they're coming from. Or you could try and set it up so that, all right, I have my MVP and my star correlated with one another, and I'm driving that spot through the multiplier, and then everything else, lands in the util. And if you're going in that direction, you want to keep in mind the way that the lineup would flow. So, let's just say you're going down lineup with the Dodgers. You're punting the Ohtani spot because it's pricey, but you want to go like Freddie Teoscar in your multiplier spots on FanDuel, and you want to go correlation there, and obviously you're getting the correlation there. I would play it with Teoscar, the 4-hitter, the guy who comes second in the batting order, in the top spot, in the highest multiplier spot. Reason being, if he's the one driving in Freddie, he's going to be the higher scorer of the two. Freddie obviously has his own individual upside, and the correlation. So whichever one the correlation more strongly favors, whichever one would benefit from driving the other guy in, is the guy I want in the higher multiple spot. Hopefully that makes sense. That's if you're chasing correlation. If you're just trying to bullseye the top raw scores, good luck to you. It's baseball. Freddie obviously is tremendous, remains one of the absolute best first basemen in baseball. 41.6% hard hit, 9.1% barrel. We did see a little bit of a dip in the quality of contact last year. We also saw him come down year over year as far as his averages on base skills go. We're getting up there. He's 36 now, I want to say. 35 and a half. Turns 36. When does he turn 36? June sometime? September. Oh, not till September. So end of the season, he'll be 36. So this is his age 35 season. But we are definitely getting up there. You can see if we scroll over a little bit. Year before, 331, 410, 567. Year before that, 325, 407, 5 something. So an appreciable decline, but that decline still put him as one of the leading first basemen in terms of just the hit tool, the ability to get on base. 282, 378, 476 slug, a 194 ISO, obviously a dip in the ISO as well from 235 the year before. The power was down somewhat, 29 home runs in 2023 versus 22 last year. It's still Freddie Freeman. We don't want to overthink these things. Oh, by the way, I skipped over the pitching matchup entirely. Left-handed Shota Imanaga going for the Cubs, right-handed Yoshi Yamamoto going for the Dodgers. Fun that it's two Japanese pitchers dueling in the Tokyo Dome. I have both guys. I'm bouncing between whether I want to go to 4.5 or 5 innings as a projection for these guys. They're both built up right around that 4.5 mark. So we could probably get 5. I think it's realistic. These projections, I moved it to 5 for the show, but I might move it back when I put them up. But they'll be floating somewhere in this territory. They're not available on FanDuel, so don't worry about it, but that is obviously on DK. Somewhat of a concern. But the reason I brought it up was just, Freddie, obviously lefty-lefty. There is no reason to downgrade Freddie Freeman in a lefty-lefty, even against a very, very good lefty like Shota Imanaga. So fire away with your Freddie shares. Teoscar Hernandez, tremendous power from the right side. The only guy not named Shohei Ohtani on the Dodgers, and the only guy not named Shohei Ohtani on the entire slate, over a 10, which is our magic number in the home run model. Teoscar pulling a 10.42 today. Would be a pretty reasonable home run pick if you don't want to be super chalky and just make Shohei Ohtani your pick. Don't mind Freddie at the 8.83, and just behind that, Max Muncy at a 9.63. Tremendous power on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Nothing has changed. They've gotten even better, unfairly, as some might argue. So Teoscar for price, $8,750. Not problematic at all for a dude who hit 33 home runs with 272, 339, 501, 229 ISO last year. Just a monster season out of Teoscar. I would expect a downturn in the average, on base. The WRC plus might come down a little bit, but the power is super realistic. We're going back over 30 home runs if he stays healthy this year. 14.9% barrel, 46.7% hard hit. Just elite power from the right side. Muncy with a 10.8% barrel, 43.4% hard hit last year. 10.8% barrel and 40.9% hard hit out of Will Smith. A little lefty-righty combination down lineup. You could easily go with a Muncy-Will Smith combination in your multiplier spots on FanDuel with both of them, with either one of them for a little bit of savings on DraftKings. Those guys are tremendous bats. In 293 plate appearances last year, a partial season. What's that, a third of a season? 15 home runs for Muncy, a 262 ISO, 358 on base with a 135 created runs, 35% better than average. Let's not forget how good Max Muncy is. Strikes out a fair amount, but he's a 3 true outcomes hitter. He walks like crazy, gets on base, creates runs. And the strikeouts aren't even completely egregious. He's not a 35% strikeout type, where it's completely problematic even with walks. He's 26% strikeout rate, 15% walks. Will Smith, just 19% strikeouts. Awesome catcher bat. 544 plate appearances last year. Power is a little bit of a dip, just a 185 ISO, 20 home runs, but that's still good production from a catcher. And the fact that he does that while drawing walks, while not striking out, creating runs 11% better than average, absolutely fire away. That's a very good price to find Will Smith on a showdown slate. Bottom of the lineup against the lefty, we'll probably get the Miguel Rojas and Andy Pages configuration. They do have James Outman on the team, but he's a lefty. I would suspect that he's not going to play. Maybe you get him late as a pinch hitter. But Michael Conforto's a really interesting addition to this team. Getting Conforto's bat for just $5,800 on your DraftKings slate, that's pretty appealing. He's $6,000 on FanDuel, same deal. You could play Conforto in a multiplier spot. He is that good. Last season, the triple slash wasn't great, 237, 309, 450 over 488 plate appearances. But he hit 20 home runs. He had a 212 ISO, more notably. He's been a good bat over time. Very good premium contact numbers, 11.8% barrel, 45.8% hard hit. Again, it's Michael Conforto for a very cheap price. Yeah, it's lefty-lefty. What did he do lefty-lefty last year? Let's see. Six of his home runs came lefty-lefty last season, and he was a better hitter. Basically the same numbers as far as strikeout and walk rate. And his run creation was better lefty-lefty, 145 WRC plus against lefties. Granted, this is a small sample of 106 plate appearances versus 382 from the right. But 284, 349, 537 with an 886 OPS, a 253 ISO. He was tremendous lefty-lefty. Year before in a similar sample size, not so much. 219, 265, 333. Just a 115 ISO, just 2 home runs against lefties. That was a down year across the board. Missed all of 2022. Career-wise, 36 of 167 career home runs have come lefty-lefty in like a third of the plate appearances. Career 232, 314, 392 with a 159 ISO. So maybe you knock him a little bit, which is all captured in the model here, but we're still pulling a 7.65 that's at worst, it's underappreciated power upside. So very cheap option, and I don't think it's completely crazy to work him in into the multiplier spots. At least on FanDuel. On DraftKings as a captain play, you do get him very cheap. That's a path to being able to roster Ohtani in combination with another high-end Dodgers bat in the util spots. So it's reasonable. Rojas, not really a great option, but a reasonable enough hit tool, reasonable enough correlation. If you want to use them in a util, maybe to wrap back around if you got one of these top end bats in a multiplier spot, you could find some correlation that way. 283, 337 in the front end of the slash line. Not bad last year. Created runs 11% better than average, but we're just dealing with 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases over 337 plate appearances. Andy Pages has more realistic power upside. More realistic of an individual contributor for Pages, but you're paying more. $5,000 versus $3,400 on DraftKings, $4,500 a piece on FanDuel. Pages hit you 13 home runs in 443 plate appearances. Started out strong and then cooled off over time, but did finish the season with a 10.7% barrel as a rookie, which is not nothing. 40% hard hit rate. Doesn't strike out egregiously bad. 24.4% is perfectly reasonable. 159 ISO was dead at league average creating runs. The on-base leaves plenty to be desired. So does the slug even. Even with his pop. He needs to take further steps. But as a cheap end of the lineup kind of a bat, work him into a util role. Look to have him wrap arounds. It's not as strong a wraparound play because the on-base skills aren't really there. But he's a cheap, reasonable enough upside bat. We're live. What's up, XX Cubs fan? Our pal Dennis in the house. Good to see you, buddy. Yeah, we are talking baseball. Love it. Hit the like button. Let's help the algorithm find this show for people who will be watching it overnight, watching it at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning before they go commute. On the Cubby side, bat that I love up at the top of their lineup, Ian Happ should be entrenched there through most of the season. 341 on base last year, a 199 ISO. Very, very good player. Always fairly priced, 7,400, 7,000 across sites. I would not mind shares of Ian Happ, assuming we're getting him in the leadoff spot. Would not mind shares of Ian Happ in multiplier spots. If I'm chasing the correlation at the top of the Cubs lineup, I'm definitely going Tucker in the MVP, Ian Happ in the second multiplier spot, FanDuel-wise. Tucker is a more expensive proposition to go MVP on the DraftKings slate at 96. He's closing in on the Ohtani price. Second most expensive player on the slate, but deservedly so. He's better than Freddie Freeman at this point. He's better than Teoscar. But those guys are close. There is a little bit of a price offset for the talent upgrade that you get with Kyle Tucker. You can see in the raw projection sense, not that we really chase that as much for baseball, but it's a guide rail. Second highest raw projection on the site. In terms of a three-man unit, that 10.05 is obviously lower than Ohtani's 12 and change. But the Happ, Tucker, Suzuki three-man looks slightly better than any of the other three-mans that you can get to, not including Ohtani from the Dodgers. Just looking at those raw projections for a moment, since it's only one game. So there's some interesting back and forth there. Just looking at the premium contact numbers, too, for those top 4 hitters on the Cubs, underappreciated. Everybody better than an 11% barrel rate, 11.7, 12.7, 11.5, and 11.2. 3 out of the 4 guys at or above a 45% hard hit rate. Fudging that a little bit, but 44.9, 44.3, good enough, 48.9. And then we dip a little bit with Michael Busch, who finished the season at 39.9, but did hit 21 home runs, had a 192 ISO. It's reasonable enough power at the top of the Cubs lineup. If you remember last season, we talked about these Cubs a fair amount because they have a lineup that is good at hitting for power when they need to, a lineup that is good at getting on base and keeping things moving and creating situations for some of the situational hitting to come through. And that's been mostly maintained this season. Top of the lineup, those top 4 guys, again, 341, 408, 366, and 335 on base percentages. You're adding Matt Shaw, who's a strong on-base option through the minors. So the Cubs are going to come right back doing their thing. And then you've got some potential upside guys. Like Dansby Swanson, I think, comes back stronger than a 312 on base this year. He's historically been much better than that. I think you probably see growth in that department from Pete Crow Armstrong. So this is a good enough Cubs lineup where you can find pieces for sure here. And there are several very good players up at the top. But going back to Tucker, he's their star, superstar, whatever we want to call it. In a half a season, in his last year in Houston last year, in his final year in Houston last year, 289, 408, 585, had a 296 ISO. Hit 23 home runs, stole 11 bases, created runs 80% better than average. Kyle Tucker's every bit the superstar. He just missed time last year. Don't downgrade him and forget who he is. 29 home runs, 30 stolen bases year before last in 674. 233 ISO, created runs 40% better than average. In his half season, this half season is better than he was playing this season. He just didn't get the full plate appearances. Could be in for a monster year from Kyle Tucker. And has a very good, very good option for correlation hitting in front of him if we get Ian Happ in that spot. Happ is tremendous at getting on base. Happy St. Patty's Day to you, Don. Drinking coffee still at 8:38. Ooh, let me check the news. Aaron Gordon expected to play. Jamal Murray not expected to play. Jokic not expected to play now. If you're playing the NBA slate, you got some changes coming. That will accelerate the pace at which we end this show. Let me just make a quick note on the website here. All this and more for under $1 a day. Marcus Smart out. We already talked about that at the beginning of the show. It is now not. Right. And then Jones, White, Herter, Buzelis, and Vooch for the Bulls, as expected. Hang in there, guys. Be right back with my attention, and we'll wrap up this game. All right. Note is up on the site. NBA projection update is pending, but it's not for the 9 o'clock game. It's for after that. So we'll catch up. So going back to these Cubbies, a very solid three-hitter in Seiya Suzuki. Capable of mashing the ball. 48.9% hard hit, 11.5% barrel rate last year. Following up a season the year before, made some minor improvements there. Grabbed an additional point of barrel rate. Grabbed an additional almost a point of hard hit. Came away with 21 home runs, 16 steals at 283, 366, 482. He's not the most tremendous power bat in the universe, but he's a very good driver of the baseball. A lot of extra base hits, a lot of pop in that bat. 199 ISO, creator runs 38% better than average. Another dynamite piece of correlation at the top of the Cubs lineup. Michael Busch gets cheap for a guy who hit 21 home runs in 567 plate appearances, carried a 192 ISO throughout the season, created runs 19% better than average, and as I was just saying before, got on base. Not a bad option. He's got an 11.1% walk rate last year. It was 9.9% the year before. We saw a little bit of growth. Look at the nice growth year over year. 9.9% walk, 33.3% strikeout. Strikeouts came down by 5 percentage points, basically, 28.6, while walks went up. That's a beautiful thing to see, and he maintained his power. Beautiful thing to see. A lot of growth there from Michael Busch. Definitely worthy hitter in the cleanup role. That's where I expect to find him. For a showdown slate, worthy of shares at the cheap price, and should honestly get a little bit popular. I'm not sure what the popularity is going to look like, but he is a very, very clickable name at those prices. Dansby's a player who might not get that popular, just given the downturn that we saw basically season long from him last year. 242, 312, 390. Finished the year at 99 WRC+. Finished the year with a 148 ISO. That's down from a 172 ISO the year before. Creator runs 4% better than average the year before. We lost 6 home runs. We gained 10 stolen bases. But we took a dip in a little bit of on base. Certainly a lot of slug. And compared to the year before that, we're even further down the line. So Dansby, what are we dealing with? 30, 31, just turned 31. So not the oldest guy, but definitely up over the top of the mountain and coming back down the other side. So I would expect something probably in between, or like an average of the last 3 years. But that is still a good player. And he's still a guy, even last year, 42.5% hard hit, 9.2% barrels. That's not nothing. It's reasonably chasing the numbers he had the year before. He doesn't strike out that much. He does walk. He does get on base typically. He's probably more valuable in a full format where we're just talking about like a shortstop play that you can click in there, or a guy that you can get for cheap at shortstop. But as a util guy on a showdown slate, as long as he's hitting here in the middle of the lineup, if he dips down to this part, you're downgraded a little bit. But as long as he's hitting 5-6 somewhere in that territory, I think you're perfectly fine going to Dansby, and he's cheap and he might be underappreciated. But you've got Matt Shaw sitting there. Shaw is only 3,000. He's a rookie. Assuming he's in the lineup, which I fully expect him to be, that is a great buy. He's probably going to be highly owned because people are aware of him. He's been, buzzy throughout the spring. He's been seeing drafts in redraft leagues. So it's no shock to find Shaw there. But if you're unfamiliar, last season across... Oh, can I not shift click anymore? Oh, it's only for MLB season. All right. Last season, across 675 minor league plate appearances. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That is the summary one. That's I'm all right. I got it. 523 plate appearances. They added the summary line in here. 21 home runs, 31 stolen bases across AA and AAA. 371 of which came in AA. 152 plate appearances in AAA, but maintained his quality. In fact, gained in quality when he got the promotion. Overall, across the two levels, 284, 379, 488. Just an 18.2% strikeout rate with the pop in the bat. 11.9% walk rate. 203 ISO. Last year that was a 379 on base. In 170 plate appearances in 2023 across high A and AA, he had a 400 on base. Hit 8 home runs in 170 plate appearances. Stole 15 bases. Kid is legit. So this is a really interesting guy. If you see ownership projections that suggest he's not going to be owned, let's see. I don't think these are actually updated valid ownership projections, but let's just see. Oh, now they're not even there. They had them earlier. Maybe if I reload the page. Oh, weird. It's all the Cubs. Yeah. Can't talk about what those numbers might look like because they only have ownership up for the Dodgers. But if you suspect he's going to be cheap, or if you just want to use him as a highly owned building block, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Could end up the top individual performer on the slate. The kid is good. That said, all of these Cubs are going up against Yamamoto, who is a filthy pitcher. So bear that in mind. Pete Crow Armstrong last year was much more of a good defender with speed than he was a legitimate major league hitter. 410 plate appearances, ended the season at 237, 286, 384. That is not good. Hit 10 home runs, stole 27 bases despite the low on-base percentage. There's talent there. He's already probably the best defensive center fielder in the game right now, but needs to get better at the plate to be sustainable in the outfield. You got to find the power bat. You got to find the hit tool, the on-base skills. Something has to click. With the speed that he's got, if he's just doing this and getting on base a lot more, he's perfectly fine given the defense. But for our purposes, he's an underwhelming option who might get a little bit over-owned because people know the name by now. He's a highly regarded prospect. A lot of that came up, if you look, there's a distinction from major league prospect versus fantasy prospect as you're looking through numbers, right? So he was a buzzy prospect. He was a highly regarded, highly ranked prospect for Major League Baseball, but not necessarily for DFS. not necessarily for what we're looking for. So he can tend to get a little bit overowned. And in the minors, there were good numbers here. So it's not completely out of the question that we do see growth. In 2023, at 20 home runs and stole 37 bases across 2 levels of the minors. So again, there is justification for believing that the bat will grow. But what we've seen right now has not been much of a hitter. So I'm a little bit more skeptical on the Crow Armstrong. I think I'd rather have Matt Shaw for an $1,800 discount for a $1,000 discount, depending on what site you're playing. And since they're playing the same position at Util today. Miguel Amaya, mix and match quality catcher, not really a bat. 8 home runs in 363 plate appearances last year, 232, 288, 357. Entirely skippable outside of just a happenstance play. You put him in, it's a low-scoring game, and he happens to go 2 for 4. And maybe it's something in a util role. He's going to be extremely low-owned. It'll be for a reason. He's not very good. John Birdie, not very good, but did have a quality stolen base season 2 years ago now, 2022. He stole 41 bases. But 2023, he came back, got on base at a 345 clip over 425 plate appearances, but only stole 16 bases. So his value as far as a DFS contributor, he's just an okay hit tool guy. But he didn't really create runs, 4% above average. You can do better. There's no power here. Last season, it was just 74 plate appearances. He really didn't get in too many games. Had a 342 on base, did steal 5 bases. Maybe you could squeeze a little bit there for 5,000, 4,000. This is more of a utility guy where we can get cheap during the regular season and cheap John Birdie at second base because he's playing today and hitting in a weird spot in the lineup. That's the kind of play that John Birdie's going to be. Not a go-to option here. But again, it's baseball, so you do deal with the happenstance of it, the dice rolls of it, and you can work with any of these guys just throwing them into a util spot because they're cheap. Talking about the pitchers. As I said before, I've got them right now at 5 innings. Both guys are stretched out to about 4.5 in their most recent starts. Figure about 15 hitters, 15 outs. Those are 2 different things. 14, 15 outs is about right. I think that's where the over-unders are. But Yamamoto, in his 18 games, his 90 innings last season, 28.5% strikeout rate, 6% walk, a 2.86 xFIP. That was against a 3.0 ERA, so it was very much he looked like who he was on the surface. But who he was on the surface was probably not fully appreciated just because of all the hype coming in and then not pitching a full season. I think maybe it was underwhelming as far as what the actual numbers look like because they were quite good. 111 whip, a 12% swinging strike rate, 30.4% CSW, allowed 41.3% hard hits with a little bit of barrel in there, but it didn't burn him at all. For one, he keeps the ball down significantly, just an 8.4 degree average launch angle allowed, 1.9% home run rate. He's very difficult to hit home runs off of. So fire away with Yamamoto shares, but he's very expensive. If you're putting him in the captain spot, more expensive than Ohtani, I'd rather just go Ohtani. Especially in a situation where not at full peak form as far as conditioning and everything, ramping up through spring training. There's always bigger question marks on pitchers at the outset of a season and limited innings. They'll let these guys pitch, but they're not going to let them go beyond 5 if they get 5. So a little skepticism there. On the other side, Imanaga, slightly cheaper, slightly lower projected. That's mostly around strikeouts. He's also a very good pitcher. 173 and a third out of him last year, 29 starts. Just a 4% walk rate. Noteworthy strikeout to walk at 25.1% Ks and just a 4% walk. Allowed just a 1.02 whip. Had a 14.4% swinging strike rate. So I suspect there is more strikeout upside to come from Imanaga. I like him to go up. Probably we'll see 28.2. 28.2. Write it down. End of the season. We'll check it. I think he goes up a little bit just based on the fact that he can miss bats. The 27.3% CSW obviously needs to climb a little bit to achieve that, but with more strikes thrown, that will happen. And to have that low at 20 CSW and just a 4% walk rate is already an accomplishment. He's a fly ball-oriented pitcher, 17.8 degree average launch, so you can get the ball up and out of the ballpark against him, which favors the Dodgers' power numbers a little bit. 3.89% home run rate allowed last year, and Stuff Plus doesn't really like him. Stuff Plus was basically dead even on Yamamoto, and just a 90 grade where 100 is league average. But that can come and go. He has been demonstrably an effective pitcher. And even with lower end Stuff Plus, if you don't walk anybody, if you keep opportunities limited, there are different paths to being a good pitcher than being just electric, 3+ pitches type guy. But there is definitely a power downside here. If the Dodgers get the ball in the air, Tokyo Dome does slightly favor home runs. So could be a boost for Dodgers power. And again, that's the side we're seeing the power on. Very limited as far as the power upside for the Cubs. Despite having power, nobody or only Kyle Tucker is even halfway to the magic number. A lot of that is because of Yamamoto's ability to keep the ball down and limit home runs, as demonstrated in his 90 innings last year. The other thing you can work in would be the bullpens. I threw this in at the last minute. These are just last year's numbers for some of the bullpen arms. I don't think it's really probably worth chasing just because it's a lot of guesswork. But if you're inclined to go that way, Tanner Scott, Ryan Presley are your closers for these teams. Tanner Scott is going to share that role a little bit with some Kirby Yates in there. Maybe even some Tranian. You've got a solid multi-inning guy in Porter Hodge. You also have Nate Pearson, who used to start down here, so I would imagine you get multi-innings there. We're obviously not chasing holds, but those are on the board, and you've got some reasonable. You can always gauge like usage and quality of relief pitchers via holds. Oh, I just realized these are two different boards because I had this set up for the the off-season recap that I did, so it was starters and bullpen, and I just sloppily went to Dodgers and Cubs, but I forgot that I didn't have saves and holds up there, but it doesn't totally matter. Very solid strikeout options through the Dodgers bullpen. Kirby Yates, nearly a 36% strikeout last year. Blake Treinen at 30.4. Alex Viesa at 33.1. Kasparius at 32.4. But you're talking about needing to bullseye the one inning at a cheap price just to work a guy in, just to get cute. And to me, typically that gets too cute by half. You really don't see that work out that often. But there are quality options here. And if you're going to do it in a game where we're only figuring 4.5, 5 innings, or 4.5 for the model, obviously we're working thirds in baseball. But you figure 4 1/3, 4 2/3 innings, 5 innings tops. You're going to get some of these guys. How many multi-inning appearances did Yates have last year? What I don't think we'll see, and it kind of defeats the purpose of looking up what I'm in the process of looking up, what we probably don't see is the guy go multiple innings, or like an inning and a third, 1.2 out of the pen, just because of where we are at the very, very beginning of the season. Yates did it a couple times last year. He worked 2 a couple times, 1 1/3 a couple times. Treinen was basically just an inning. So if you're not looking closers, if you are considering relievers and just throwing darts in, large field GPPs, if you're not going directly to the closers, I think Yates and probably Vicia are the two most interesting options, most likely to get an inning, and then maybe that turns into an inning and a third, depending on where they come into the lineup, where they come into the game. If this game gets ugly, then you could obviously see multiple innings out of some of the downboard guys, in which case they get, the one person out of 50,000 that rostered them ends up getting lucky. But I don't think that's the kind of quality that you want to chase. And once you get into those guys, you're dealing with worse pitchers, you're dealing with lower strikeout numbers, and so on and so forth. So there's a reason those guys are long men and mop-up duty types. Pearson. Yeah, Pearson's not uninteresting as a guy who could, pitch to multiple 4 hitters. But again, no guarantees we see him at all. 26% strikeouts last year. It's a lot more moderate as far as the strikeout numbers go in the Cubs bullpen. Only Porter Hodge was above a 30% last year, which is what really makes you interesting. He also walked 11.6% of hitters, but was very, very good. But again, I don't really encourage you to go chasing relievers. Aggressive Goose. Oh my God, we are so back. Yes, we are, my friend. I love it. That is basically top to bottom, though. There's only one game to talk about, unfortunately. I think I went through everything I can, basically. For as guys we might see if you're chasing, I don't think you want to be working in trying to chase pinch hitters. On the Dodgers side, not the deepest bench in the world. Like maybe Justin Turner gets into the game at some point as a pinch hitter. If you get the odd, Justin Turner start, then obviously you can play him. By the way, the roster resource on DraftKings on FanGraphs is tremendous. So yeah, from the Cubs, Turner, and then your other bench players on the list here. Carson Kelly, the backup catcher, is not going to get anything interesting. Most likely won't get in the game at all. Gage Workman, Vidal Brujan, not much there. Brujan is a switch hitter. He's a light hitting type though. Would only be in there to pinch hit, pinch run, that kind of a situation. So I don't expect to see much there. And then on the Dodgers side, Enrique Hernandez is probably the guy you're most likely to see out of this group. Again, we got Rojas in the starting lineup, but Hernandez plays basically every position on the field, may well get the start in the spot where we've got Rojas. They do have playable pieces and guys who may not end up starting, though. Like Chris Taylor is also right-handed. So there's a chance you see either Chris Taylor or Enrique Hernandez. If Hernandez isn't in the infield, there's a chance you see either of those guys in the spot where we've got Michael Conforto right now, just for the lefty-righty of it. I don't expect that. I think Conforto is going to be pretty entrenched there regardless of pitcher. But you never know. Either of those guys, pretty low end. They were both very bad throughout last season. .202, .298, .300 over .246 for Chrissy Taylor. Hit 4 home runs, stole 5 bases. Enrique Hernandez, .229, .281, .373 with 12 homers. At least he got a little moderate pop out of Enrique. 393 plate appearances. There's nothing to write home about, though, in that line. They're both better hitters over time, more productive bats over time, but neither guy is tremendous either. I mean, there's only, out of these 4 spots across 3 seasons, only Chris Taylor in 2023 was above average as a run creator. He had a decent little season that year, 384 plate appearances, 15-16, had a 183 ISO and a 104 WRC+. But not bats we're going chasing. Andy Paez also could be a guy that either one of those guys plays instead of, by the way. But I think we're probably pretty close on with these projected lineups. Dr. DFS. Yeah, I love doing stuff with shows with Gunn. It's been a minute. I know he was out of the game and focused on wrestling through last year, but if I'm seeing things correctly via social media, I haven't spoken to him, but it looks like he's firing up a website and jumping back in the game. So at worst, I am sure we can come up with some kind of coordinated show from time to time. And, at best, maybe there's some cross-pollination there. Buy one, get one half off or something like that we could set up as a promotion for our sites. probably would have been a good idea for the two of us to put our heads together and say, like, hey, instead of competing with one another, why don't we go at this together? But we did not do that. So I haven't spoken to him, though. But yeah, I would love to if we can make it happen. So keep an eye out. Either way, we'll be here for every slate, every main slate, at least during the week, with a few exceptions from time to time. But no slates just like, man, this is getting away from me. I'm not going to be able to do a show today like we get with basketball. We'll be on top of this. Speaking of basketball, we are beyond 9 o'clock. We do have an update to get in. Pretty important one. Luke is available to play. Nick Richards is available to play. Jazz starters, by the way, were Collier, Williams, Markkanen, Potter, and Kessler. Where did I have Micah Potter? Oversight there, guys. Apologies. Probably not going to matter. But definitely did not get on top of that Micah Potter play. We were talking too much baseball. I wouldn't worry about it. If Micah Potter burns us, I will gladly give everybody who played the basketball slate their money back for that show, not for the subscription at the site. I was going to say that, but then I didn't want to have to refund $1 to people. So we missed Micah Potter. Apologies. I think it was worthwhile to do the baseball show. But with that in mind, guys, let me punch out because I do have important updates to get done for NBA. And we've talked about literally everything we could talk about for this one baseball game tomorrow morning. So I'll be up in the morning. Any questions or anything like that, drop them into Discord. I'll try and get on them and answer them in the morning. Obviously, if you've got them now, ask them now in chat or drop them into the Discord and ask them there. It'll be easier to answer them now. But definitely be here for the next little bit, at least updating these 5 remaining basketball games in the 10 and 10:30 hour. With that in mind, guys, good luck out there tomorrow. Oh, and these projections will be loaded up onto the site very, very quickly after the show. With that in mind, guys, good luck out there tomorrow morning. Somebody go win something. Share it when you do. And we will see you. We'll do another one of these for the following day and probably say most of the same things because they'll be mostly the same lineups. 2 different pitchers for the Wednesday game. See you, gang.